know it's going. Okay, Acting GM, have we got any apologies, please?
No, we
I've a mover and a seconder. Yep.
We should accept an apology from the general manager.
Yep. Yes. Sorry.
yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
So we have apology from general manager. I've a mover and a
I'm happy to move that.
Yep. Member Leslie, Member Capel, all four. Against carried. Thank you very much. Confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting, the Upper Macquarie County Council on the 18th of June. Move and second. Member Reynolds, Member Ring. Is that right? You're right. No, you weren't here.
I wasn't here, so I can't. So.
Second that.
Member McKibben. All four. Against carried. Sorry. Yep.
I've already informed the acting general manager of several errors. One of them being,
Do you like to?
There was an issue, item 3, which was in the minutes moved by the Deputy Chairman, Councillor Reynolds, and seconded by Councillor Reynolds.
I was going to point that out too, Mr. Chair.
I think there needs to be some consistency of referred to. I don't think it matters how they're referred to, but it needs to be consistent through the minutes.
Member or councillor, yes.
No, well, doesn't it's yes, it's member, councillor, then we have deputy chairman, member, councillor,
Yeah.
deputy chairman.
Yeah, it's member or it should be
It
member.
doesn't-
Yeah, I agree.
All I think is that to be consistent. You can't refer to the same person in about 15 different ways.
Understood. You've got, no, you've got,
Yeah, we've talked about
no,
that.
thank you. Member Capel.
Yeah, just one issue, item 2, the annual operational plan. I'm down there as a mover. I'd be very surprised if I did move that, although I haven't gone back and had a look, because, and there could be an issue voted against it. And I'm pretty sure I didn't move it. I don't know who did, but
Chair, I think I did, but again,
I
I'd have to look at the
That's
video.
where the issue is. Yep. That will be fixed up. Thank you. All councillors for? Against carried.
Subject to the amendment.
Subject to the amendments, yes. Item 7, we got any disclosure of interest, acting GM.
No, we didn't.
I've a mover seconder. Member Reynolds, member McKibben, member Reynolds, all four?
Aye.
Against carried. County Chairman's report, item 1. Certificate, unaudited general purpose of financial statements. We have a recommendation there. Could I have a move and a seconder?
Move.
Member McKibben. Member Rice.
I mean, you should. It's your report.
No, we're doing this. The chairman's report's gone to confidential, so we are dealing with it later, and we're now dealing with item 1, which
Yeah, the chairman's report, as I said, we do the confidential at the end. Sorry,
we're dealing with the unaudited general purpose.
general or purpose, yeah. I will be moving that other one, Member Leslie, when I come to it.
Right.
So we're item 1, the certificate unaudited general purpose financial statements. Member McKibben, member Reynolds, Member Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions that maybe need to be taken on notice. Firstly, I did notice that our staff costs are starting to move out, particularly leave, and whether we can have a look or an understanding of why the amount of leave is increasing that we're provisioning for in the accounts. The second question, and so I don't know, is there an answer or does the acting general manager want to take it on notice?
Yes, I can address that for you. The increase in the leave provision is as a result of aerial spraying programs that were conducted during that financial year. So as a result, what happens is extra work goes into the aerial spraying program. On top of that, we're also trying to conduct the usual biosecurity inspections. And so what happens is leave isn't taken and time in lieu is built. And so hence the extra provision.
I take that's in notice to work that back down again.
That is correct, yes. Yep. So we have a an understanding that staff will try the 8 weeks as per the award.
Thank you. Yep.
Second question, Mr. Chair. I noticed the amount of chemical that we now have on stock has increased substantially. well above what seemed to be the sales over the last 12 months. So is there a reason? Was there a shortage, or did we get a very good deal if we bought more chemical at a higher
Acting
volume?
GM.
Yes, sure, I can answer that one also. At the moment, we currently have a memorandum of understanding with the local land services to a current project called Living on the Edge. And what that focuses on is the national parks through sort of Lithgow and Oberon. And they have arranged that if they meet a certain criteria, the local land services will fit the bill for their chemical. And so as a result of that, they estimated how much extra chemical that they would require, and they've made that arrangement to purchase it through us. So we expect to see that go down considerably over the next.
One final
Sorry,
question, Mr. Chair.
I wasn't missing.
Then we can go to Member Capel. With regard to the aerial program, and it's probably to the side of the financial reports, but I was wondering for the next county council meeting whether we could actually have a report on the cost and the revenue, so an actual separate report on the aerial program, so that we know how it's performing financially as a separate part of our accounts, but it doesn't have to be within the annual accounts as such.
The General Manager undertook to provide that after the next.
Can you just a little bit muffled? Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think that unless I'm wrong, the General Manager undertook to provide that after the next one, because he said, when we said last time it had nearly broken even, cost to expense, but the next one should, I thought he was going to provide a breakdown of the cost, but maybe I'm wrong. Is that right?
That seems to ring a bell, but whatever the case may be,
We'll put
I'd
it-
say it's in process. If it's not, we'll make sure it's in process for next meeting. No, it's a,
So do you want, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, no, you're
Do
right.
you want it for what's been done, or do you want it for the one coming up in spring?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the one that's just been done so we can see how it's performed, but also a projection for, as in, you know, from a revenue, once we can see how it's performed, the revenue projection for the next one, so that we can see whether we need to have a higher rate, and we may have already set the rates for that, but just to see how it's performing and whether we need to have a higher recovery cost.
otherwise that will be undertaken. If any other questions, councillors, members, sorry. All for? Against, carried. Thank you. Item 2, statement of investments as of 30th of June 2021. We have a recommendation there. Can I have a move a second? Member Kingham, Member Fry, Member Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to the General Manager or Acting General Manager. We are building up cash reserves here, and we're, I think, at 1.3 something million when you take into account the other bank account, and may I think 1.326, I think it is. May I think that this report, for a start, as in it's the report I've been keen to get for a while, and so it's perfect. As in, I appreciate what's been provided here with total funds available, etc., including what's in our everyday account as well as our deposits or cash earner accounts. So thank you for, as a compliment to the staff for providing this report, as I'd like it. But a note out of it is that we've gone from roughly $1 million in cash to 1.3 million in the last 12 months. I know our profit was about 130 something thousand dollars before the audit, but we as a county council, and I suppose this is more a statement, need to sort of set a benchmark and go, okay, well, that's enough. We need to now start spending, as in, if we consider that, 1.3 is enough, that we start spending some of our cash. We don't just keep building up reserves of cash for a rainy day, as we've heard today with sticky nightshade, for example, but also might potentially be able to be used for roadside spraying, as in to use a little bit on top of what the councils are providing for roadside spraying. So I'd just like to see if we can, and again, I know our projection is about, I think it was 40,000 or whatever the budget projection was for this next financial year, but could we potentially use some of our reserves in this current financial year that we've just started, rather than continuing to just make a profit on a profit, which we've gone from 44 or whatever the figure was the previous financial year to 137,000 the last financial year, and continuing to build up our reserve. So again, some form of plan potentially to come back to maybe the next county council meeting to look at using some of our cash reserves rather than just continuing to build.
I'll just ask acting GM to make a comment, and then Member McKibben.
Yes, so just in relation to the usage of those extra funds at the moment, my understanding is that we've already put aside or set aside some of those extra funds, or a lot of those extra funds, to go towards a member that we've just brought on, which will help and hopefully eventually be completely paid for by the aerial spraying program. The additional roadworks, which is, or the roadside spraying, I should already been agreed to. The legal action that we could possibly be getting soon or going through soon. And the money's held over. So as a result of not having that staff member for a certain amount of months there, and bringing on extra staff and the new staff, was a delay there. So we are holding some of that, what we call WAP funding, that was actually not through WAP, but the actual council contribution will be held over to be this financial year. So you may see a bit of difference and probably more spending in this upcoming financial year.
Member McKibben.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say that obviously the first quarter of 2021, cash higher than they are now. They're at 1.8 and they're at 1, I think 1. And a large amount of that is obviously restricted, so it's already put aside for programs, etc. And I would assuming probably it's the restricted as against the cash reserves hasn't varied so much as to the as compared to the fourth quarter.
Member Reynolds.
Just as, well, I don't know if the right word is correction, but you look at the fourth quarter of last financial year and it was just $1 million. The fourth quarter of this financial year that just concluded, we've got 1.3, so we're up $300,000 in cash wise. I know that it's restricted. The other thing to note, and it might be pertinent to ask our auditors when they come back, as far as I understand, there's no such thing moving forward as restricted anymore. You can reserve them for particular funds, but they've removed it from the accounting standards. But I think it's a good question to ask the auditor when they come to deliver to the county council on what you can do with what is previously been termed restricted funds, but may have now a new definition and you can't directly restrict them. But I'll leave that for the auditor when they come to present, Mr. Chair.
Member Ring.
Yeah,
You're right. Yep.
yeah, Mr. Chair, can we just get a very simple report for the next meeting on what those restricted funds are, regardless of the terminology? What is that money there for? Just so we know what it is.
Yeah,
Thank you.
fair call. Your question, Member Reynolds, has been taken note, and I'll also make the comment that with every member here, with the hard work between what everyone's done and the staff, it's nice to actually be asking those questions, to actually see a balance sheet looking in the right direction, and actually being able to look at maybe taking on more weeds in a more effective manner. So look, it's actually quite nice to be able to say that. Members, any other questions? Member McKibben, sorry.
No, I don't think it's appropriate now. I'll ask the question later.
Okay. Councillors, the recommendation I said as before, all for? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 3, County Council end of term report. We have a recommendation there, report of it 2017-2021. Have a mover and a seconder. Member Capel, Member Leslie. Any comments, Council? Member Capel?
I'd just like to say that I think these reports sometimes are, we think that they're just something else that we have to do, but an end of term report gives you a rundown of all of the things we've done. Obviously, we come along to the meetings and we complain sometimes about not enough being done and we should be doing this and we should be doing that. When you have a look at this, the job that we've done over the last 3 years is pretty amazing, I think. You know, a quarter of the properties in the council's area have been inspected, 5,370 on-site inspections. Roads and the advances that we've made with forestry and railways, I think is far beyond what I expected that we would achieve. Not only for our own use, but so that we can go out into the areas.
Thank you very much. Member Leslie, sorry.
Yeah, that was, thank you, Member Cable. That was very succinct, and to actually get a report that that explains that it's the responsibility of the landowner, as I mentioned earlier, that it's the responsibility of the landowner. It's not, and we're there to facilitate or to watch, to guide, perhaps even punish if necessary. But weeds is the responsibility of the landowner, and we've moved so far in the last 3-4 years that to be understood, and we're making great gains. I think that's so well.
Member Leslie, Member Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one thing to add is behind any good organisation and to get the outcomes that in this report, and I fully support both Member Capel and Member Leslie's comments, it's the staff. I think we should also acknowledge that the staff's contribution, the staff's dedication to getting out there, doing the inspections, involved in the aerial campaign and progressing Upper Macquarie County Council. From when I came on, the County Council was maybe treading water at best, and we're certainly progressing further. I see there's a report later on in this meeting with regard to promoting the achievements, but I just think that it's important to acknowledge our staff and our staff's contribution since I have been on this County Council for the last 4 years. So I'd just like to thank each and every staff member, and if you could pass on to, and I'm sure the other County Council is exactly the same, pass on to the rest of our staff the appreciation of their contribution over the 4-year term that I've served on this County Council. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Reynolds. Any other members? As I said, you heard me say at the end of the last one, and yeah, it is right. And I do congratulate the staff for their efforts, because I think every member here, it's the most vocal Upper Macquarie County Council I've ever heard. But to be vocal, we've been able to achieve a lot. So, you know, to the staff and yourselves, it's tremendous for that simple fact that it might be tough questions at times, but if we don't answer those questions, you know, to see 3 people turn up today, and I thank Member Reynolds for encouraging that to happen. I think it acknowledged we have achieved a lot, but you know what, we've achieved a lot. We've got a lot more to go. But thank you, members, for your comments. Recommendation here, could I have a move in a sec? Can I, all 4? Against carried. Thank you very much. Item 4, delivery program annual progress report 2020-2021. Recommendation here, could I have a move and a seconder? Move, Member Reynolds. Move a seconder, Member Ring. If any questions? No? Oh, okay. It's unusual. Sorry. All 4? Against carried. I was a bit shocked then. Sorry. Item 5, pecuniary interest returns for the 2020-2021 return period. Recommendation here. Can I have a move a second? Member Kingham. Member Kingham, Member McKibben. Any commentary, councillors? No, didn't think. Good. All 4? Against carried. Item 6, County Council meeting schedule for 2021. There is a recommendation there. Member Reynolds, if you're happy to move, and Member Capel second, you had a comment about the November meeting. Could you actually make
you,
that comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as in the November meeting is right in the middle of the proposed election. Most of the members would probably, if they're running again, would be on pre-poll. And so you may not be able to get a quorum. We'd also be in caretaker mode at that stage. So I was going to suggest if we could move that meeting to, I think we go into caretaker mode about the 4th of November, but I'm not 100% sure of the date.
It's approximately a 4-week period before approximation.
Might be the 6th or somewhere around that, but as in if we have the last day of before we go into caretaker mode, so we can actually make decisions, whatever the Friday is. So if it's Friday the 6th of November, could I, as part of the moving this to amend that meeting be on the 6th of November, if that's the right date, at the at Oberon, I think, so that we make an Oberon.
Looking at with the 5th being the Friday.
That'd be the last day before, because it's the 4th of December.
Yep.
There's the thing. So if my seconder is happy to amend to the 5th of November.
Is it?
Except, yeah, happy with the 5th of November, but the 8th of October to the 5th of November is a very short space of time.
That's the question that
You want to bring the 8th of October earlier?
let's see
The
other.
reason it was the 8th of October was that we had to wait till after the September elections. So
That's exactly right. So would councillors be happy if we've said about the 5th of November here, but if I ask acting GM to have a look and we'll get feedback straight out to you, is look at maybe bringing that meeting towards what would have probably been towards the end of middle of September, I think it would have been. Would you be happy, so we're not mucking around with dates, and we'll get back, but we'll take that on notice to look at the 8th of October coming into September. Mover and seconder would be happy for that.
As in one potential comment is whether the auditor, as in normally that's the meeting where the auditor comes, if it can be audited and the auditor can attend. So that's probably more to the point of working with the auditor if they're able to come in mid-September, or whether early October is the
Look, I've got
date.
the discretion to call an extraordinary meeting if I have to bring that in. So if everyone's happy with that, mover and seconder, we'll look at the 5th of November. Comment in the notes is that the October meeting of the 8th of October, we'll look at a September date with understanding of the auditor's commitment. But as I said, I can overcome that through an extraordinary meeting.
That's
Councillor,
assuming the 5th isn't within the caretaker period. It may be.
yeah, it can be if it's within the caretaker period. It's best to you can still do, but you just can't do major business.
They'll make major
You
decisions.
can't look, let's go and take a $2 million loan, or let's go and start this program we've never done before. So the papers will be based around the fact that we know where we are.
If we still have a backlog in re-inspections, would that allow us to still just?
Probably not, but I will take that on notice and have a look at that for you, and I will get back to you, Member McKibben. Everyone is comfortable with that? No further comments? All for? Against? Carried. Thank you, members. Item 7, publicity for councillors leading biosecurity activity. There's a recommendation there. Could I have a movement? Member McKibben, Member Ring. Member McKibben, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is one of the things I suppose I've been pushing a little bit on the basis that in the end of term report, as I think Councillor Member Capel said, obviously says what we've been doing, but what we've been doing for internal use, but it's not actually telling people so much externally. Now that we've got some runs on the board, I think we should be publicising our activities, but also publicising our activities to the extent of, if you're a landholder, get your act together in relation to weeds, or you'll be visited by us, because it's getting to the extent, and I was surprised, for instance, I think Bruce Gordon said today that he wasn't aware of, for instance, any publicity in relation to Sticky Nightshade in the Panwara or any of the areas where it had been, or any of the activities that are being performed. Now, I know, for instance, that Bruce is a fairly, active landholder. He's not, he goes to things and he's out there. He's not a person who sits on his property all day and works and doesn't have time to actually contribute to the community, etc. So I was surprised about that. So that makes me even think more that we do have to put something out there to say that this is what's being achieved, and so that it tells the good landholders that we're actually doing something, and it tells those that are not, really doing the effort. And I'll, obviously in confidential, we'll look at that further, but that if you don't do it, be aware you could be hit with directions, you could be hit with penalty infringement notices, and will take you to court if necessary. Now, that's not the way we want to do business, but unfortunately, there is a subset of landholders who just, as we all know, ignore biosecurity directions and just will not do anything. So part of this publicity push is to actually tell people we've got the runs on the board so that we convince our good landholders we're doing the job, but also telling those landholders who are, let's say, being neglectful, that watch out or we'll get you. If you won't do it, do it with all the means of encouragement that we do with all reasonable effort.
Thank you. Member Capel.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what Member McKibben. What we need to keep in mind is the old 10-80-10 rule. If you get 10%, we get 10% of our people enthusiastic, and 80% will then follow them. So rather than us aiming at the 80%, let's focus our initial so that they know exactly what's going on. They're with the whole operation of this organisation. They can become our we start to move on the 80%, and they're the ones. I think out into the field and promote our activities.
The ring.
Yeah, look, it's very important for the county council to increase its credibility in the broader community, but we also need some professional advice, I think, on how best to get that message across. There's lots of mediums today to get that information out. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you put it on a digital platform, you get people saying, I don't get it. Then you start advertising in the media, but we don't buy the paper. We don't get. I mean, that's a very difficult area, but I think getting some professional advice, there's obviously limited funding, and there are a number of key messages that get out. Need to work out the most effective, cost-effective way of getting that information out to people. And I think getting professional support is the way to go.
Thank you. Member McKibben.
I agree with Councillor Ring. One of the things, I suppose, that all our respective council constituents receive is their rate notices, whether digitally or whether in mail form. Something or have something on that on the digital platform where that whatever a flyer comes out. If you get it in paper form, you have a flyer with the rate notice. That is probably the best median of trying to get all property owners, because they all pay rates, except with the greatest respect, Forestry Corporation, parks, etc. But we have other means of getting to those. I'm talking about our private commercial landholders. It's one that we do have that advantage in that they all have to pay rates. So whichever we can all, if we can get a flyer out, and I know that we've missed the bus, if I might say, with some councils, but that is a means of getting it out, and we would be sure that everyone would receive it.
Thank you.
Well, not everyone, because some people only get their rate notices via email.
That's what I'm saying. But you have it as an attached, when they get their rates notice, attached to the email is our flyer.
If I could, that doesn't always work. We had that happen with the water bills that went out because there was a delay in sending them out. And even as a councillor, you look at the rates, you don't go down the email and see all the other stuff. If you actually get a physical bill, then you've got those attachments in it. But when it's just an email, you don't necessarily scroll down and look at everything if it's in the one document. So I think we just need to be cautious with that.
Member Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's many ways to skin the cat, is the thing. I think some good ideas have been put up here, as in, funnily enough, I did have a look. I pay my rates on an annual basis, so I've just had my one notice for the year. But I did actually have a look down our notice, and it went on forever and ever, which was good. There was a lot of good information there from my council. But again, as Member Ring said, as in a lot of people don't scroll down and have a look, they just look at the rates notice and go, I'll pay it for the quarter. But I don't discount, I think this county council has achieved a huge amount of positive outcomes over this last term. As I mentioned earlier, I commend all of our county councillors for working so hard together to get the outcome, as well as the staff. And I think this, as in written one way, I think we also should be looking at things like when field days start up again, and whether bore and ore takes place or not, but whether we could possibly have on LLS stand, if they're willing, or some other, the weed authority, but a member over the 3 days if bore and ore does go ahead in, I think it's the end of October, early November. But also there's a number of, what do you call them, shows or field days where, and we do attend a number. I've seen our staff at Carcor, for example. Again, it comes up in, I think, November. So there are a heap of different opportunities to market, but we do need the material, as Member McKibben has indicated, so we can actually show what we're achieving, but also as in get that information out, like, for example, with sticky nightshade, on how to control it. And once we've got some research, for example, on that weed, to actually get it out to people in the affected areas. So target areas for specific weeds where there is a need, where we perceive there is a need, rather than with sticky nightshade, for example, that there may be some areas in Lithgow, some areas in Bathurst, some areas in Blaney, and maybe even some areas in Oberon, where we need to target rather than a blanket coverage of every issue. But I do commend, and again, personally, I know at least in Oberon Council and my own council, I write reports every 6 months on the performance of Upper Macquarie, and also talk to the media about Upper Macquarie. So I commend this recommendation, and hopefully we can progress it and get some professional advice and undertake a professional marketing campaign. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Member Kingham.
Mr.
Sorry.
Chairman, I'm fully in favour of the resolution, but we need to be very careful about this word public relations. I don't believe we should be publicising ourselves as much as we should be publicising what people can do to control the weeds. So I'm all for education, and I think there should be a lot more articles, and they don't need to be very extensive. They need to be short with a photograph in the newspapers, which are always online, so people can get that information to them. So here's the issue of sticky nightshade. I've got some myself, and it's easy enough to control if you get it early. And that's what we have to do, in my view, is publicise how people can control the weeds, and in a topical way, rather than telling everybody how good we are. So that's my view. Concentrate on the educational side of our activities.
You member King, member McKibben, sorry, member Kingham.
Look, I also agree with what Member Kingham has said. It seems to me that we have a number of avenues. Obviously, there's free media. Obviously, you can't show pictures on the radio, but you can at least make people about critical weeds in our area with ABC. I'm not an expert, and I think members would probably have a better idea. But you know, even some targeted television advertising, I mean, it might be quite expensive, be quite good if we can actually put visually on the television critical weeds we see and just give a snapshot to people of what it is. Have you got this on your property? If so, you need to be aware, contact us. You know, it doesn't have to be a long ad, but sometimes television can have an impact because there are, you know, there are people who we have as Member Reynolds said, there's a range, and Member Ring, there's a range of media platforms that people now use. It's across the spectrum. Probably in the grazing farming sector. It's probably more on the conservative side. So still some of the former means, whether it's radio or television, still have some predominance. To a degree, newspapers, but again, the readership of newspapers quite as much probably. Be best using something in that area like the land, which is. Don't know. As I said, professional advice is probably needed, but it also needs some local knowledge. You can't bring a public relations person or expert from Sydney to.
Could just put a word of caution in. Great idea here, but we don't want to end up where the media campaign or whatever it is we end up doing is that our staff, our very limited office staff, end up doing substantial amount of work that takes away from their core responsibilities. And we don't employ 50, 100 people as or more as the councils do. How many people? 7? It's not
Lucky.
You just have to be cautious about the advice that we might get that ends up saying, well, this is great idea, but our acting general manager ends up doing a stack of work that is outside the core responsibilities and outside the time available to do it. So we have to target this in a way that can be achieved without enormous staff resources or even moderate staff resources from within our organisation.
Members, by everyone's comments, will agree that the hard work we've done, we need to keep the message out there, and the way we do it is very important, and the way we do it is going to probably be multiple platforms. But we've also spoken in here as a council with what was just said then, when we go to our aerial weed spraying program, we actually lose resources of staff. So you're very right on that. And it could be, just thinking off the top of my head, it might be a possible engagement with a local Charles Sturt University, where there's media students, communication students that could potentially help us run a program on platforms. I know we have resources for students to, I guess, internships with us at work in our events team and stuff like that. There could be a whole lot, but what Member McKibben has spoken to me a number of times, we both agree, and I don't think it's a matter of really saying, we're getting out there saying how good we are. We're just getting out there and saying what we need to do. So we'll continue to work on this, and hopefully maybe at next report, we might have a bit of an idea, maybe what I don't know, a 10-second TV ad would be worth and what this would be worth. And then everyone can have a bit of an idea to also, 10,000 flyers going out, what that would cost us. So,
If I could just interrupt.
sorry.
Could I suggest that I know that our general manager in Ireland will listen to the business, to the recording. Could I specifically just suggest that that you draw his attention to this particular debate for the various points of view that have come through, so that, because to do this, I suspect we'll need a further report back to the council here to deal with it, and bring that report back. I think some of the reports may help him.
Reynolds, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do endorse what Councillor or Member Leslie has just said. To actually, we do need a further report with a plan to look. And offline, I may suggest someone who is local, who might be able to help us outside of our staff resources. But again, no connection directly with me. But I do some work in this area, and I find things like case studies of landholders or examples or connections with locals that are doing the right thing. Generally, the newspapers will lap them up. So if you can get someone who can write up a story in an hour or two, which a good journalist can do, it won't cost you a lot of money, and you may be able to get it in the Lithgow, Bathurst, Blaney and Oberon papers, or a proportion of them, depends if they're local or not. So there are options for a lot cheaper or freer media, as well as the more expensive marketing campaigns.
Appreciate that. Thank you, members, for the debate. All for? Against? Carried. Item 8, weed biosecurity compliance activity. There's a recommendation there. Cover mover and seconder. Member McKibben. Member Capel. All for? Sorry, Member McKibben, sorry.
Yes, I could. So if I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, so that reading this, as at the 30th of June 2020, there was a backlog of 241 re-inspections, and at the 30th of June 2021, there's a backlog of 640, of which 166 were due the 1st of July 2021. Is that correct?
Chief.
Sorry.
Chief Biosecurity Officer.
Sorry, for you, Mr. Chair. The 640 is all of those columns added together.
That's right. So,
but it's not including what's been done.
The private land, though, it says backlog 1st of July 2021 is 68. I actually counted more than that when I looked at another area of this.
Yeah, so for you, Mr. Chair, I checked those numbers as of where we are now. Obviously, we're a month and a half ahead of when this was written. So as of current, we're 37, a backlog of 37 private properties. Now that's in,
that was the ones that were due the 1st of July 21. Is that ones that were due as at 5th of August 2021? I counted up in another area of the papers that are provided today, which I'm not dealing with the confidential issue other than referring to totals.
You're right.
I came up with 160 would be outstanding as at the 31st of December 2021 from that report. Currently outstanding. That was just private property.
Said as of December 2021.
over 160. That was just looking at that appendix. This is
We don't actually have
confidential, yes.
So it's into- Yeah,
But I'm just wondering, so you're saying now that the backlog at 1st of July or the backlog at 5th of August is 37? So are you
As of the
saying
start
that
of
everything was
August,
due,
start of-
everything that's due the 5th of August, there is to be inspected, there's only a backlog of 37? Or are you saying as at the 5th of August, there was as a backlog of 37 that were due the 1st of July?
So as of today,
Yeah, I'm
Dave,
trying to
your
get my head
figure you've
around
got
it.
37 is based on what?
it's based on where we are as of present, as of the start of August.
Of all backlog as
On-
of the
that's-
start of
that's
August?
just on private. That's just on.
Just
private.
on private.
Private land, but so if there were some inspections due on the 31st of July, which there were, are you saying that they are included in that backlog figure of 37? Or are you saying, no, they're not included in that figure? That 37 is just that we've got up to date, up to the 1st of July 2021. We've managed to do all the inspections, but it's due by that date, except for 37. Understand the
I'm
nuance?
trying to, yeah.
I'd like to take that on
Yeah,
notice.
take this on notice and let me
come back to
come back
member
with it.
McKibben
Yeah,
and provide that answer also to the other members, please. Are you, member McKibben, are you comfortable with that? There's confusion. I'll make sure the numbers are right. And if you've got confusion, can you please check to make sure you're understanding exactly what you're being asked?
we're asking.
So my next question is, if there's 37 private backlogged, are you saying that the 234 is still extant for the backlog that were not due on the 1st of July, 1st of July?
Say that again.
The 234 that you've got at 1 July 2021 is, can you, did you put that again? How did you put that with the backlog of 234? Is that the figure as of today?
Well,
Where we at
it
today?
sort of reflects a little on what the earlier question was, but I note, for instance, that some of the not yet dues 1st of July 21, there are some, I can say this, some inspections due in 2023. So I'm assuming that they're in that figure.
Yeah, they're not yet due, yes.
And there are some due on the 31st of July. Are they within that figure? I would assume so. But then if they could also be in the 37, if officer is saying that, you know, the backlog's down to 37 as of today, is that the, goes back to the earlier question.
Early question.
The figures that we're looking at here. One up on the.
No, I do understand that, but it's just that the chief wheat officer said that they'd produced.
They have reduced. Some of this I can explain, but it'd be easy to explain it in the confidential when we can talk a bit more.
If we can do that, but if I can ask the question, we are achieving to cut back our backlog in a sustainable and achievable way.
Yes.
We are starting to see an improvement on our backlog. So if you're comfortable in the confidential, we'll go into a bit more detail, but we could explain maybe cases, and cases will explain this better.
Yeah, it's still, I make the comment that when the aerial program starts on when? So the aerial program, we start doing work, we're doing work now, but with this new person, we will still be probably taking people off re-inspection activities. With a backlog of 302 or some lesser figure, let's say 270, will they, by the time we get to October, will they have all been, or we won't, some of the 234 won't be in time for the re-inspection, but will those that are due to be inspected by October have all been inspected?
Confident we will get the inspections due by that October date.
So that we can, the aerial program people come, I understand, will unfortunately for that program.
Yeah, can you help? It's a rolling, yeah.
I was about to say,
It's a rolling.
It
This is
is-
what I want to
it is
explain.
So that
wanna explain
exact number of, say, for example, in private land, 68, those exact landholders, they will be
will be
inspected,
inspected.
but you'll have another possible 68 more or less that have come along that are different landholders. Those numbers aren't specific to the landholders themselves. They're just a rolling figure of what the backlog is at the time. And yes, you'll probably see an ebb and flow of the aerial spraying and roadside spraying all having an effect on how we address these re-inspections. But we've also adjusted, and with that change in policy, we've looked at our compliance dates and we've tried to adjust that to go along with the ebb and flow to make sure that we're timed things so that it all starts to fit together like a puzzle. I think you will see a constant backlog, but it won't be the exact same landholders all of the time.
I suppose if I can.
Yes, please.
Talk about it more, but as Lisa's explained, it's a rolling effect. So for example, in the time from when these numbers come out to the start of August, there's approximately 120 properties that have been inspected that were due, that were inspected within their due time, that are now back in the system before sort of Christmas time or shortly after Christmas time. So they've been inspected, they've been deemed that, yes, there's still an issue and we've had to proceed to the next step, and they've gone through. So yes, you've knocked 120 off, but those 100, well, you might have knocked 150 off, but 120 of them have rolled over to come up again. So it looks like we're not getting rid of that log, but we're constantly re-inspecting them and moving them to the next step.
I understand this, but the concept is, and we've resolved as a county council, that re-inspections take priority over initial inspections.
Yes.
So if we're having a constant backlog of re-inspections that are coming due, and they take priority over initial inspections, we could get to a stage where we're actually performing very few initial inspections because the bow wave effect is getting larger and larger and larger, because a re-inspection create a further re-inspection that create a further re-inspection. And this is my concern and why I raised at a former meeting, do we need decided to review it later in the year? Do we need another inspector? Because we do want initial inspections and trying to keep this bow wave effect under control. And I'm not sure with the aerial program that the bow wave is not suddenly getting to here and then October, November, and we've got December again. Some will be due the 31st December. There are a lot due the 31st December or in December. And a large number due in January 2022 and March. It seems January, March 2022 and July. Yeah. So my concern is that we're bow wave slightly getting bigger. We'll never get the opportunity to do re-inspections. If we've got to put a new person on, it's probably first instance, it's better to start in with initial inspection.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. We still have new inspections occurring. Obviously, the focus is on the re-inspections, but there is still new inspections that occur on continuously throughout the year. The other thing too is, as a number of the other members have already pointed out, is that at the end of the day, we're inspecting, we're trying to enforce, we're trying to do what we can, but the responsibility falls back to the landowner. If the landowner doesn't do the work, it doesn't matter what we do. When we get there, all we can do is go to the step. So as hard as the staff, or as many staff as you have on working at it, if the landowners aren't doing the work, they're going to continually be in the system, no matter how you work through that.
I think when we get to confidential side of the meeting, you might be explained. But I think we also, all of us here, need to recognise the fact that we know by our effectiveness, we've actually created more work. But also the day's going to come with that effectiveness that we're having less people that we probably have to target. And the education program, as it's been said by a number of councillors, members, to get that information out is an important part of it. But success also creates problems that, yes, we need to mention. I understand your difficulty because, we're talking about figures there. Since then, so many weeks later, we've achieved this. Fully understand where you're coming from, but we've got to also understand that as long as we are re-inspecting, as long as we're doing first inspections, and I think all of us here agreed a while back that there is a potential, maybe we need to bring a staff member on that is operational, but that is also very much every member here. The decision of us if we need and think we need to go down that path. But we put another staff member on to inspect those inspections, and hopefully 25, say 50% are good, 50% we have to re-inspect. We've also created a whole lot of new re-inspections again. So it's a good debate. Let's actually break it up a bit more in confidentiality. Member Reynolds, I will get to you. Did you have one final?
I just wanted to carry on from what you were saying, Mr. Chair, in that it's that whole, as you said, yes, that extra staff member is going to do initial inspections to start with, but those initial inspections are going to create a hell of a lot of re-inspections. And with our focus being on not the clean properties, being on the 3s and 4s on the bad properties, all you're doing is, yes, you're doing initial re-inspections to start with, but you're creating a bigger amount of re-inspections to continually chase, because we're focused on those bad properties, which we know are not going to get cleaned up in the first instance. They're going to take a number of inspections to get there.
Member Reynolds, I've had you patiently waiting, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to go back to Member McKibben in a moment. One issue that really concerns me when it's and Member Leslie has brought it up on a couple of occasions, is the responsibility of the landholder. And when you look here, public land, 57 that are not yet due, 183 in linear pathways, as in the state government to some extent is letting us down as well. So it's not just the private landholders, it's others. But what I actually did want to highlight was that maybe the acting general manager and the general manager and chief weeds officer develop some form of program or pathway to sort of say, okay, well, yes, we've got a program that we're looking at, doing 30 a month and we've divided amongst our inspectors, as in this inspector is going to be on leave, which I mentioned earlier about, as in the backlog, but actually have some form of 6-month or 12-month, and with the aerial spraying, etc., that no, we're not going to be able to do some this month, but the next month we're going to do 50 or something like. I'm just pulling figures out of the air, but look at developing some form of program so that we have a target that we can sort of set to see, rather than saying, yes, there's a big backlog here and some are not due till November or December or March, etc. But sort of aim to, as in to get an outcome by the end of this next financial year, that we're close to. I know we're creating new business, but to actually at least set some objectives so that our staff can see. But it does concern me with the amount of public land in particular that is still outstanding, that and it's up to the landholder, and so the state government or the agencies aren't doing a good job.
Member Kevin, thank you.
Sorry,
No, you're all right.
can I get clarity? Where we talk about linear pathways, I'm thinking that means roads.
Roads, water, rail, predominantly, yeah.
There have been some movements forward in the rail area.
Correct.
There have been some obviously movements with forestry and
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh, sorry, for you, Mr. Chair. So a lot of the railway inspections have been done after this date, so they are greatly reduced. And also the roadways, a lot of the roadways have been inspected. A lot of them are come off, but then the boys have also kept some on and added new ones as part of the proposal for this coming program. So the roads look like there's a lot to do, but the reason they're in there is because it's giving us the tick to say that, yes, we need to go and spray them.
my second point is that in relation to one of the issues I think raised by Councillor Reynolds, part of it is dealt with in the chairman's report in confidential.
Sorry.
Look, it's very easy to talk about the legislation. And the responsibility is on the landowner. Okay, we understand that. But as regulators or oversight, if we do not implement action to enforce the regulations, people won't comply. It's that simple. We need to ensure that goes through. And I understand from Emma Kevin talking about, we've got this policy strategic level about not letting it interfere with initial inspections. We've also got a responsibility to ensure that we follow through that pathway. We're committed to ensuring a good result for our community. That means we have to make people comply. I'd like, if possible, at the next meeting, if we could get a bit of understanding on the resource constraints or issues which lead to these backlogs. It's very easy to talk about putting more staff on. That also brings in a whole budgeting issue. What are the key issues? What are the key factors? Do we have to go back to our key policy or strategy and say, well, the priority has to be to get compliance and get a better success rate? Or, there's got to be that balance between the two. So if we could get that at the next meeting, that would be great.
Member Ring, thank you. Member Kevin.
Just in response to Member Ring, I think last meeting or the meeting before, where obviously we raised the issue
Last meeting.
and the general manager additional resources were required would be considered.
We're trying to get to October
meeting. The been raised as something in the chairman's report under I think we all absolutely agree with what both you and and basically just continues to disregard their biosecurity obligations. We should put the full force of the law, and you'll recall that I put a notice of motion up at the last meeting saying let's start prosecuting people if they won't comply. So I think we're moving down that track. I think at the last meeting, we would continue to monitor the resources issue. I've raised this today because I wanted to keep the issue. As I said last meeting that, you know, we don't get to the spring program and suddenly realise we've got a huge back. And as we all know, I know that, you know, there's some areas I think, and I've discussed with the Chief Weeds office that I think we should be targeting because we know that there are some bad weed infestations there and really drag on till the middle of next year till we've got resources to do. Normally at one stage, and this is maybe an appropriate time to raise it, the Chief Weeds officer and I discussed there are a lot of areas within our county council area that are very hard to get to, and it's not even really possible to stand on a road and send a drone over because they're over the hill and you've got to have line of sight with the drones, as we all know. So we discussed the possibility that maybe at some stage we actually have to get a helicopter for a day. I think it's in the not too distant future, we're going to get to that stage. But again, we don't want that to be a further hindrance on our reinspection program. So I think that also has to be looked at in the Oberon area, some of the southern Bathurst area, southern northern Bathurst area. I'm not sure about Blaney's got some areas as well that are really hard to get to, and you know it's those properties no one ever sees, but they're a huge biosecurity risk to their neighbours. And again, going back to something that Member Reynolds said, will be a cost for the hire of the helicopter for a period to do that. Maybe the Chief Weeds officer would like to comment on that. Do you think that would be?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I mean, that's something we'd have to think about and come back. Like, I can't give you a time frame of when or if or.
But we can map it at some stage. Yeah.
So I think, you know, members, again, it's clear that it has to be kept in right in front of us all the time, and we have to ask some questions, put you on the spot in that. But I think, as I said, we must continue to understand the evolving nature of weeds and how we're going to control it. And yes, there's going to be costs. There's going to be actions taken about people. This council has clearly made an indication, and we're not far off at all, probably having our first test case, which will be very interesting. But in the everyday business, we must keep questioning this and making sure that it is not getting away from us. But it was said earlier at an early point that we acknowledge where we are at now. If it's 4 years, a number of councils said it. And I'll say it again, we've done a wonderful job, but doing a wonderful job also means a lot of issues that go with it. So, council, there's no more further discussion. I've had a mover and a seconder. All for? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, could I have a resolution to move into Member Reynolds, Member McKibben, all for? Against? Carried. Can you please?
Recording in progress.
Okay, Mr. Acting GM, Mr. Sorry. GM, I'm really sorry. That's really bad. Could you read out the results of the confidential committee, please?
In relation to the chairman's report, general manager's performance, and one, that the findings of the performance review committee with regards to the general manager's recent annual performance review made on its behalf of the council under delegation be noted. 2, pending the installation of a new county council in December 2021 and the subsequent review of the council's business activity strategic plan in early 2022, the performance management plan of the general manager as endorsed by the council for 2020-2021 be rolled over into the 21-22 period. Number 3, which we've added, the superannuation increase from 9.5% to 10% in line with the legislation. In relation to item 9, Weed Biosecurity Risk Register, the council notes that the Weed Biosecurity Risk Register report for June 30, 2021 be noted.
Do I have a motion to adopt the recommendations of the confidential committee? Move Councillor Reynolds, Member McKibben, all for? Could I have a motion of the recommendation of the committee of a whole be adopted? Move Member Leslie, Member Fry, all for? Against carried. To declare the meeting closed at 5:08. Thank you, members. Thank you very much. You just press over.
That's green now.